Welcome to Political Paradigm. My guest today is a former senator who wants to be governor of Kaduna State in 2023. Senator Sani, welcome to Political Paradigm.
Thank you for having me.
I think anyone who's followed your political journey would understand why you left the APC at the time and joined the PRP. What many may not understand is why you left the PRP for the PDP.
In 2015, the APC started on a very good note, giving all those who are desirous and committed to change and liberation of this country the opportunity to come under a platform from which we can all gather forces and then realize what we believe was our vision of a new Nigeria. But right after the change happened in 2015 and the APC became a ruling party, then crisis emanated from the states, and one of which is my own state. Now people who emerged as governors now became emperors, and the whole party was structured around them. And it became impossible for people with a divergent opinion or who differ in thoughts and ideas and also vision to be accommodated within that very platform. And then we saw a systemic campaign by those who were the executive governors to weed out those who don't kowtow or bow down or become subservient to their own thoughts. So I noticed that, and then from the onset, problems started between me and later other senators with the governor of the state. And it was very clear to us that the governor wants to impose his will and determine who becomes and who doesn't become. And I believe that the reasons why many of them left the PDP to join the APC, they cited such kind of anti-democratic activities and the collapse or absence of inner party democracy, internal democracy. And then we found ourselves in a new party with an old thinking and old strategy. So people like us cannot breathe in that kind of platform. So I have to leave the APC. And then in the National Assembly at that time, there were defections going on. People were leaving the APC to the PDP. But in my own case, I went back home and had consultations with stakeholders in the house of the former PRP leader, Balarabe Musa. And then it was decided that I should come to PRP. But, and I was given the ticket in the PRP to contest, and I contested, and I got an appreciable number of votes, despite all the rigging, but I got 75,000 votes, I think. And then Balarabe in charge of the party, then there were issues now. When he said he is old and now he wants to hand over to someone, and then we cautioned him on the fact that whoever you want to hand over power to, the seat of the leadership of the party, must maintain the ideological and philosophical foundation of the PRP. And trouble started between Balarabe Musa and the person he handed over the reign of leadership with. And as such, there were factional leadership. And we tried to mediate and bring the two factions together. It became impossible. Professor Sule and then Falana Bello, a former banker. So now I sat down with our supporters in Kaduna and other stakeholders. And now we look at the future of the state, and then we come to the conclusion that if those of us on the opposition continue to operate in different clusters, we will simply be strengthening the ruling party to win the 2023 elections. So after all consultations, I then decided that we should all come under a single platform and which the strongest opposition in the state is the PDP. So I and others, we joined the PDP today and say we are gathering forces to make sure that by 2023 we evict, we dislodge, and we remove the APC from power in Kaduna State.
I think one of the questions anyone would ask you is this, that you've only been in the PDP a couple of months, and you've already made your intention known to be governor of Kaduna State. Why would the PDP give you a ticket in 2023? Are you confident of getting that ticket in 2023?
Well, first of all, I am not ignorant of the intrigues and the intricacies and the shenanigans of a major opposition party like that, being that in history they have been in power from 1999 to date. But in Kaduna State, they are now an opposition political party. And there is no one single individual that controls the party. And for me, I believe that is a party I should identify myself with. That is one. Secondly, despite being in the APC and in the PRP later, those of us who are from Kaduna State have been concerned about the situation in the state, the collapse of security and the failure of the government in the state to address the challenges we face, and the fact that the state has not been properly governed. So, and most importantly, the anti-people's policies of the government of Kaduna State. So we collectively, from those who hold this conviction, knew that if we have a divided house, we are not going to remove this party. So the PDP, as an opposition in the state, is now a platform for which the people of the state believe that they will have an alternative government. So it is a matter of, if we decide not to come together, we will give the ruling party the opportunity to continue to be in power. So for the stakeholders in the PDP, they welcomed me on the ground that they know what I stood for and how I have been fighting, and for the fact that I have most times spoke their mind. So I didn't find it difficult for us to work together. I may be a new entrant in the PDP in the state, but we have been comrades in the need to, the desirability of changing the leadership in the state in 2023. It's not a life and death situation. I joined the PDP and I offer myself to contest for the governorship of Kaduna State. And that does not mean that everything begins and ends with me.
But that doesn't answer the question of your confidence in getting that ticket.
Well, for now, there are about 4 people who have expressed interest. And from my knowledge, others have been in the PDP for as long as God knows. So at the end of the day, one person will emerge. And the choice for all of us is that whoever emerges, we have a moral duty to gather forces together and see to it that he succeeds. Once the process is credible, is fair, is transparent, and it is within the ambit of the law and our conscience. So I believe that even if I didn't get the ticket, there are others also who will not get the ticket, who are also PDP members.
But are you concerned about people who say that since you left the APC, went to the PRP, lost an election there, that your political powers have been depleted, political strength have been depleted? Are you concerned that that could play a role in PDP considering you for a ticket or not?
Well, I don't think that will be, because the PDP too have contested 2015, they lost, 2019 they lost. So I believe that They know it very well that failure should not be an option this time around. And how do we get the people of Kaduna State to rally around the party and win election? And if you really want to win election, if you are desirous and determined to win election, you must welcome all forces and every input, every contribution, every person who has something to deliver must be brought on board. Dislodging a ruling party is not that easy, but I believe that the party, the opposition party in the state, now know very well that they need all the forces they need to dislodge the APC. In 2015, the APC could not have won election in Kaduna State without the support and defection of members of the PDP. And we believe that similar scenarios will emerge, and then we're going to win.
You spoke earlier about some of the anti-people policies of the government of Kaduna State, which you intend to reverse. And it's interesting that the governor believes so much that he's done so well and advised the people of the state to ensure that they don't vote in the PDP government so that these policies are not reversed. What are the policies that will give you concern that have been enacted by the Kaduna State government?
Well, first of all, I will be more concerned about what I intend to do for the state than how the present government has failed. And what I intend to do are things which they fail to do or refuse to do. And I said,
I'm taking you back to what you mentioned. It was you who said that there were anti-people policies that have been enacted that give you concern. So before we talk about what you intend to do to correct those policies, could you highlight some of those policies that you are concerned about?
Of course, there are so many. First of all, the government of the state, or the governor of the state, because he is the government of the state, he embarked on programs and policies that are inhuman in Kaduna State. First of all, he boasted of unfolding an infrastructural development program without a human face. People have been ejected out of their homes, their working places, their business premises, without serious concern of what becomes of their life. People have been retrenched out of their jobs, sacked, and without concern of how they are going to feed their family and take care of themselves. And you have a government in that very state that has not taken cognizance of the diversity, the varieties and the ethnic configuration of the state in terms of being just, fair, and to all. So to me, I believe that whatever developmental policy a government is taking, unfolding in a state or a country, must take the human aspect of it, which is the fact that if you are actually working for people, then people must be carried along, and their own concern, their worries must also be. It's what is going on in Borno State. It's an APC state, but you can see how the governor is so passionate and compassionate about his people, and how for whatever he is going to do, he carries the people along, and you don't see this kind of criticisms you have in Kaduna State, in Borno State.
Are you comparing that with the Southern Kaduna, Northern Kaduna situation? You think that the people of Southern Kaduna have not felt governance?
Well, from my own understanding of the way governance is run in Kaduna State, I think he is building a beautiful city, but without the people. And he wants to expand routes within 2 local government in the state, which he is doing, put on street light, and then blow it over social media that this is what, because you are not from Kaduna State. I believe that all you know about Kaduna is the Kaduna city itself. So what becomes of the 23 local governments we have in the state? If I ask you, what are the agricultural policy of the government in place? You don't know any. If I ask you, what are the policies on sports? You don't know any. if I ask you what is the governor doing about reactivating the moribund industries in Kaduna, which has been laying there for decades, none at all. So we, in our own policies and programs, we want to develop Kaduna State while carrying the masses along with us. We want to build a future for our children. If we take on the healthcare system, we will not come to the media and say we have a free medical care system, but when you go to the hospital, people are paying charges for this, charges for that. I will say you have a free education, and then from primary, secondary school, people are paying exorbitant fees. And the university, state university, is one of the most expensive in the whole country. And when we say we care about our workers, that we shouldn't just massively retrench them and then bring few and post them on the TV and social media and say this is. So what we want to do for Kaduna State is to unfold a program that will first and foremost unite the people of northern and southern Kaduna. They have never been so divided. People from the southern part are being ruled like an apartheid state today. It's as if the government begins and ends with the people from the northern part of the state. And I come from the central part of Kaduna, and I believe that I will be the bridge between the north and the south. Kaduna State today has become the hotbed and the hub of terrorism and banditry, and to the point that people are slaughtered every day, people are kidnapped every day. Many of our people living in rural areas have migrated to the city. They have burned down many villages to the point that even those who are still living in rural local government, they have to pay bandits and terrorists to go to their farms and then pay them to be able to harvest their crops. So what is most important to us is how to restore security. I don't believe when governor says that security is the exclusive issues of the federal government. The question I will ask you is that we have security structures in the state: the army, the police, the civil defense, the immigration services, custom, and others. How many of them have operational vehicles that they'll be able to fight? I'm not just talking as someone with an aspiration of being in Kaduna State. You go to Kaduna State and ask the security establishment in Kaduna State, whether civil defense or the police, when last did they receive any serious delivery of donations of vehicles, of equipment for the security of the state? We can't continue to fold our arms, and our people are being killed every day, being kidnapped every day. Kaduna State now is simply about Kaduna City. You can't move a kilometer outside of Kaduna without you getting into the hands of bandits. If you can remember, the students of Greenfield University were kidnapped, and over 200 million naira in ransom was paid for them to be freed. Students of Federal College of Agri-Mechanization in Mandu were kidnapped. The same amount of 200 million naira was paid. Students of Beptil Betes High School.
Where did we get the information of how much was paid?
Well, the parents themselves have been granted interview. You can Google that. It's very easy in the present
world. Which is clearly different from what the government or the police have said.
Well, the police can say anything, but what I know very well is that if unfortunately you get any one of your relatives or friends kidnapped, it will be a big mistake for you to go to the police, because they appeared helpless and hopeless, and the government also has nothing to do. Recently, an Igbo chief was kidnapped just in the outskirts of Kaduna, along with other 50 others. Everyone has to pay to get out from the hands of kidnappers. So where is the state when people are not free, when people are not secure, when lives have become so cheap? So to me, we need a government that will provide facilities, equipments, and funding to security agencies so that they will be optimally do their best to protect our people.
But is that enough? Because you've clearly opposed state police, which the governors have said would aid or at least support the fight against the insecurity situation in the country. And you clearly agree that the governors do not really control the security agencies. So is provision of vehicles, operational vehicles, as you say, it's support enough to fight the insecurity?
Well, from my own knowledge of what is going on in northern part of Nigeria, why has there not been terrorism and banditry in Kano State? Why not in Gombe State? Why not in Bauchi State? Why are those states secured for now? So all you will go through is that what have you done from your own side? Because you need to do something. And security begins from the DPO's office. How many divisional police offices in Kaduna State and other states in the south, northwest have the capacity, the capability of confronting terrorists or transmitting intelligence information? So I'm still opposed to the state police, and I support the president opposition to the state police on the ground that it is going to be the force to which state governors will use against political opponents and critics. And how will I go about that? If you are going to fund the vigilantes and you make effective security committees in the villages, we are going to be able to tackle this. I have samples of rural areas within Kaduna and Niger State where the villagers, the locals themselves, have organized themselves to protect their villages. So if you can support them, the mission will be accomplished in terms of providing security.
Supporting this case would be what?
Well, supporting them with finances, supporting those who have decided to offer themselves to protect their country, their city, their villages with the necessary funding. Also making sure that the arms that are allowed within the law are also being properly provided for them to protect themselves. I believe that that is achievable.
But then again, the narrative of governors using the state police as their security weapon, as their political weapons, is that all there is to it? Are there no positives with state police?
Well, everyone speaks from his own experience. From what I know very well, that the existing federal police, once they are well equipped and once they are well structured, they can tackle the problem we face as a country and as also a region. The northwestern part of Nigeria today is one of the most security paralyzed in Nigeria. And I know that if you have proper funding for the police and the necessary equipment for them to fight, they will fight. The question you need to ask yourself, some few months ago, there was a time some female soldiers were deployed along Kaduna-Abuja expressway. And from that time, they were able to tackle security issues. But nobody knew the reason why they were pulled out. But I believe that if they were properly funded and remunerated to do that job, we will achieve what we want to achieve. And in the present state, in some states, state police can work. But in some states, you have seen where the governors don't have the temperament, the mentality and the tolerance to be able to wield such kind of power and then keep everybody safe. When you have governors who are intolerant to criticisms, governors who are intolerant to opposition, governors who forgot that power is transient, and now they have the opportunity to set up a police force where they can arrest people, they can shoot, they can do whatever they want to do. I believe that is going to be a hell for people like me and others. Yes.
Well, let's talk about your plans for the development of Kaduna State. I think many who know the history between you and the governor would question that because you recall that recently the governor reminded the people of Kaduna State that it was you and Senator Suleiman Hunkuyi who blocked his loan request that would have seen some form of development in the state. He mentioned specifically Cow Bridge. So with that in mind, many would question if you really mean well for the people, or if you let the rift between you and the governor come in the way of development in the state.
You see, we talk so much about Cow Bridge, as if Cow Bridge is the only bridge in the northern part of Nigeria. There are so many bridges in Kano. They don't make noise about it. In Plateau State, I've seen how Jang has constructed bridges going on in Taraba State, bridge in Yola, Adamawa State, and the governor of Borno State have just finished constructing a very lengthy bridge. So why so much talk about bridge in a state where people are slaughtered every day, people are kidnapped every day? If you are building bridges, you should be building it for people. And I believe the human element is so important. If there is bridge, you can't move out a kilometer away from where that bridge is to without getting to run bandits when it is 7 to 8 a.m. The bridge leads to Zaria. That is where people right now, from Zaria to Kaduna, there are over 60 people still in the hands of kidnappers. At the very time when a member of State Assembly was shot and killed, and his body was found in the bush along that place. So the bridge we need in Kaduna State, first and foremost, is to bridge the gap between the people in the southern part of the state and those in the northern part of the state. That is one. Secondly, to bridge the gap that exists between the government and the governed. So when I say infrastructure, well, it is fine. He is beautifying the Kaduna metropolis. But what becomes after Kaduna metropolis? Where is governance? So about the loan you're talking about, yes, there is no doubt about it. We stopped the approval of that loan, and we have our reasons for that. First has to do with the debt profile of Kaduna State. At that very time, Kaduna has a debt profile of almost $250 million. And he wants to borrow $350 million. And then we were not convinced on a payment plan that will not suffocate the economy of the state. That is one. Secondly, there was no transparency on how that money is going to be spent. And right now, as I'm talking to you, there is nobody in Kaduna State that can tell you dollar after dollar, kobo after kobo, how that money they have gotten was spent. That is secondly. So the structure of the way the money is going to be spent was virtually non-transparent. The third aspect of it was that if you are requesting for a loan, you have to convince us on how you're going to pay that loan and what project are you going to embark upon that will pay the loan, which we were not convinced. So in that aspect, we disapprove of that loan. But I learned later, after we left the Senate, they got the loan. So part of my priority as the next governor of Kaduna State, inshallah, is to make sure that we verify such loans and also pay them back, because these were not grants, these were loans, and they have to pay back. Nobody in Kaduna State will tell you how much all these projects within the city cost. It all begins and ends with the governor of the state. It is a fine project going on within the state. The Murtala Square, expansion of roads and shopping malls in the states is beautiful. I must admit that. But at what cost to the state is also what we want to know. And I've seen the propaganda going on in the state now, that I said if I become the governor of the state, I will demolish the bridge, demolish the shopping mall, demolish everything that is going on. But that is simply politics. We will urge the people of Kaduna State not to vote for any anointed candidate of Governor Nasir El-Rufai. That is one. Secondly, he is the one who has said it in many media fora. And at a certain media fora, he said that the person who will succeed him will demolish more houses than himself. And that he is looking for a young person who will not within 50, the age of 50 and whatever. So to us, I believe that the people of Kaduna State should not vote for anybody anointed by Nasir El-Rufai.
Does the PDP have the structure in Kaduna State to win that governorship election?
PDP has a structure, and that is evident in the recently concluded local government elections, where they have won seats in local government and also the councillorship. In fact, let me not criticizing everything about Nasir El-Rufai, but let me appreciate the fact that it is the only state where the government will organize elections and then the opposition will be allowed to win the councillorship. And so for that, I will give him kudos for being able to achieve that. Because on other states, it is 100%. If it's APC, 100% APC has won the councillorship and the local government elections. If it's PDP, it's 100%. But we have seen some level of fairness in this.
But going into 2023, just sequel to the victory that you just mentioned at the local government elections, we find that the PDP now has 3 factions in Kaduna State. Isn't that a challenge going into the elections?
Well, there is no faction in the PDP in Kaduna State. The chairman of the party remains Hassan Het. He's the one that is recognized by the state and the National Working Committee and the National Executive Committee of the party. And all the executives at both states and local government level are all been endorsed by the national leadership of the party. So, and I have never gone to any local governments in Kaduna State where I have been told that there are 2 factional chairmen in local government.
No, you just mentioned that there's only one that's recognized. The former presidential spokesperson, Sani, had a press conference where he said there were 3 factions. In fact, he went on to mention one of them led by the former deputy speaker of the State House of Assembly, Dogara Mato. He mentioned those loyal to Senator Ahmed Makarfi and then that of former Vice President Namadi Sambu.
Well, Umar Sani is a brother who has been in the PDP long time, and I think he's one of those who have for a very long time been urging me to join the PDP. But I can tell you that I was born in Kaduna State, and I live in Kaduna State, but I have not seen any office that is open as a factional office of the PDP. The office that remains and the executive that remains are the ones led by Hassan Het, which the office is located within Kaduna Metropolis. So if there are factions, well, I'm not actually aware of them because I have not seen them on the ground. The one I have seen is the one I have joined, and that is the one that has been recognized by the National Working Committee of the party.
But just knowing there are aggrieved party members in the PDP, based on the information I've just given you, does it bother you going into 2023?
Well, I don't think such grievances will last very long, in the sense that it still remains theoretical. It's not on the ground. But I believe the party has an initiative to ensure that all aggrieved members are being taken care of. If you can recall, one of the reasons why we left the APC was the fact that the APC doesn't have a crisis-solving mechanism where issues that have arisen from the congresses within the states have been tackled. And that is why you see what happened between Ganduje and Shekaro in Kano, and then me and the governor of the state in Kaduna, and then other states. So in the PDP, I believe that we will try and reach out to aggrieved members and to see how we can all collectively work together. Because if you have a crack of a faction, naturally the ruling party will exploit it and will use one section of the faction against the other for their own benefit. So it's a strategy in war. But we will address such issues before the 2023 election.
Just before we go into other national issues, just in case the governorship ambition doesn't fall, it doesn't go through for you, is the option of being a senator still open?
Well, I don't have any idea of doing anything now other than to focus on the governorship and executive position in Kaduna State. Any decision by the party is different, but for me, this is what I'm going for. Kashim Ibrahim House in Kaduna in 2023, and I hope to see you there as an executive governor of the state.
Very well then, let's talk about security now. You've boldly spoken about the issue of kidnapping, and you said that the people who do these kidnappings or who are apprehended or whom we see or hear about engaging in this dastardly act are not really the kingpins, the heads of these rings. Does that draw to question that there are some persons who could be influencing these people and taking the huge chunk of the money and destabilizing the country?
Well, it's important for people to even, first of all, understand the difference between bandits and terrorists. Even though now there's a gazette that has equated bandits and terrorists. Terrorists are groups like the Boko Haram, the ISWAP, and the Ansaru. They have a name, they have a structure, they have an extremist Islamic ideology, and they have a focus of establishing a theocratic state in Nigeria. And their strategy is to go into the villages with arms, preach to people, sometimes use material wealth to convince people to join their cause, and then commit acts of terror. That is the terrorism. The bandits, on the other side, are criminal gangs. They have no ideology. They don't have any vision of establishing any political agenda. They are simply interested in raiding villages, kidnapping people, blocking roads, kidnapping people, and demanding for ransom. And once it is paid, you are let go. So you can see these are the differences between the two. And from my own knowledge, what you see as bandits are simply a smoke screen. There are people who are behind these bandits whom the state has not been able to unravel. When I say the state, I mean the country, the security apparatus of the state. Now you look at it from this point of view. If you pick up one or collection of bandits, you will see them with tattered clothes, underfed, looking rough, and virtually no evidence of any material wealth with them. So you ask yourself, all these hundreds of millions and billions extorted as ransom, where does it go? There must be forces behind them that provided them these arms and that also collect the proceeds of this criminals' murderous activity. So as long as we don't go after the financiers of these terrorists and these bandits, we're simply scratching the surface and we are not going to achieve our goals. So to me, ending banditry and terror must involve going after those who supply them with arms and those who collect ransom money from these people. I can give you a typical example. When the students of Bethel Baptist High School were kidnapped, the school authority or the parents were forced to provide food for those children. And a truck of food was taken to the bandits in the bush. They can't even feed their hostages. That is one. When students of the Federal College of Agric Mechanization in Mando, in outskirts of Kaduna State, were kidnapped, food has to be provided to these bandits to feed these students. Now, you ask yourself, where are all these billions of ransom money going? I am from Kaduna State. I have never seen any mansion, any house, any symbol of wealth that guy is a kidnapper and this is what he has built for himself. Each time these bandits are paraded by security agents, you will ask yourself, where does the money go? So the answers to ending terror and banditry in our country is going to the source of that terror. And that source are those people who fund them and also give them weapons.
I'm sure you watched the president's interview on Channels Television on security. When asked about security, he quite rated himself, his administration, quite high, saying that to a great extent that the security situation in the northeast and northwest have been addressed, specifically promising to do better or do some more in the northwest. Do you agree with the president's rating?
Well, I think it's as if the president is talking about another country, not Nigeria. But if he's talking about Nigeria, the evidence of collapse and security paralysis is within his doorsteps, within his very states of Kaduna. Virtually now, bandits in the northwest have become a state within a state. They have been able to establish governance structure in the sense that they don't just kidnap and extort money, but it has reached a point where they even install, according to reports, they install traditional rulers and install imams. So, and this is not very happening in the Mars, Neptune, Jupiter, or Venus. This is happening in the state of the president. Bandits have become an authority. They kill those they want to kill. They preserve those whom they want to preserve. The states of Kaduna, Zamfara, Kebbi, Sokoto, and Niger State, large swaths of land are virtually under the control of these bandits. Just 24 hours ago, bandits raided villages and, according to reports, killed hundreds of people in Zamfara State as a reprisal to the military campaign against them. So when such a person, it is important for the president to have time to have the numbers of his old friends and colleagues and neighbors and ask them of the situation on the ground. Because if you depend on your party, your loyalists, and the structures around you to tell you everything about your country or the people you are governing, you are most likely not to get the truth. They may only tell you what you like. But he should spare time. President Buhari, go through his old logbooks, look at the numbers of those his old friends and people he has lost touch with in the last 4 to 5 to 7 years. Call them and ask them what is going on. He's going to get the real situation as far as security is concerned.
All right, let's talk about the 2023 presidential election now. You have mentioned that the northern governors are probably uncomfortable with the southern governors in terms of the VAT controversy, banning of open grazing. Is it your opinion that this is one of the reasons why the northern governors are opposed to zoning the presidency to the south?
Well, you see, in a country like ours, with a turbulent and stormy history politically, it's important that we put into our political calculation and configuration the need always to preserve the union and to stabilize our country. We are a unique country in the sense that with such a population of over 200 million people and such diversities in religion and ethnicity, our political order should be that in which we'll take cognizance of all these factors so that we can collectively move forward while preserving the republic. Rotation of power is important if we are desirous of protecting and preserving this country. One part of the country should not use the advantage of population to continue to dominate power. It will be in the best interest of all of us that we have a system where every part of the country can produce a leader in a manner that which we will reach consensus. I can tell you that there are people who today in the North are praising Jonathan when they thought that only having a leader from their part of the country will solve all their problem. And when you have rotation of power, then you make every part of the country a stakeholder. From 1999 to date, the North has produced two presidents, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua and President Muhammad Buhari. The Southwest has produced a president in the person of Obasanjo and a vice president in the person of Osibanjo. The question you need to ask yourself, what is wrong with the southeastern part of Nigeria? And if you marginalize a section of the country, you are feeding agitation, you are feeding separatism, you are feeding an opposition. If you belong to a union, you must be treated with dignity, with honor, and with respect. Why should, if we have a system, a quota system, that takes advantage of a section of the country that is educationally backward, so why don't we have a political system that will also take advantage of it, that will take care of a part of the country that are not as large in population as the other part of the country? And people will say, let's open it up in democracy and everyone should produce. That was not our history. We come from a turbulent history and we must not go back there. So to me, I believe that it is possible to rotate power. It's possible to make sure that all parts of the country produce a president for Nigeria. But things like this, as long as it is not constitutionally ingrained, can only be achieved by consensus. The political elite in the North, the governors and others, can sit down with the political elites from the southern part of the country and say that, okay, let us agree on this platform and let's achieve that. It is possible to do that. No section of the country can produce a president without the other section of the country. President Buhari tried in 2003, 2007, 2011 to be president of Nigeria. He couldn't, until he aligned himself with the Southwest, with the likes of Tinubu and co, before he was able to realize his own dream. From 1999 to date, Ogbonna, who is presently the Minister of Science and Technology, in 1998-99, he emerged as the presidential flag bearer of the APP then. And later there was some form of machinations, and then Onu was removed, and then Olufalaye contested against Obasanjo. And then for 20 years, for 2 decades, nobody from that part of the country could have been elected either a president or a vice president. And you say people shouldn't talk, people shouldn't protest, people shouldn't agitate. let us look at it. If I come from any part of the country where I am not welcome, I will do the same thing. I am an activist, I am a radical, I am someone with conscience and conviction. So if we want to protect and preserve this union, we should look beyond our individual ambition. Before you become a president, before you become a leader, there must be the country. If there is no country, you cannot achieve anything. And the only way to have a country is that all sections of the country must be treated as co-equals. To me, that is the only way to preserve this country. There are two major political parties in Nigeria. Let's not deceive ourselves, the APC and the PDP. And for those political leaders, it's important for them to know that your party can only be of relevance if you have a country. If you don't have a country, your party will not survive or exist. So it is left, since we don't have a constitutional provisions to rotate power. Common sense, reasoning, logic, and the need to preserve this republic and this country should take precedent over our own personal ambition.
But then, just before we go, you've also talked about whether the PDP would be confident in zoning, because the PDP would be more interested in wresting power from the ruling APC, bringing the question of whether, if the PDP decides to zone to the south and the APC goes to the north, will that affect the chances of the PDP winning the elections?
I am not a psychic or a soothsayer, but from my own knowledge, power can only shift to the south if all the two parties comes out with candidates from the southern part of Nigeria. If one candidate comes from the north and another candidate comes from the south, it's going to be difficult for any southerner to emerge as a president of this country. Because from what I know, the PDP don't have much problem as far as I'm concerned, because they are an opposition political party, and what is before them is how can they win election. But the problem is now with the APC, you have a president who has done 8 years, and he is from northern part of the country. So, morally speaking, the truth now is facing the leadership, the membership of the APC. Where will your conscience go? Will you still nominate a northerner as a presidential candidate? Or will you live up to your words, your statements, your convictions, and say now is the time to look at how power can be rotated? So one of the greatest legacy which President Muhammad Buhari can leave behind, if not another thing, is to make sure that he doesn't make the last minute mistake, which will cost not just his party, and which will also be dangerous to the survival of the country. So he doesn't have to be interested in who becomes a president, but he should be interested in how can the country be preserved after the decision has been made. So I think it's very important. So for the opposition party, their candidate, as long as they are concerned, is the one that can win election. But I can tell you that what will become of 2023 will be determined after the primaries of the PDP and the APC. But now the APC also the convention, because most times parties disintegrate from convention, especially when it comes to election period. At a time when different clusters of power within the ruling party knew that they have no space to breathe within the ruling party, there is most likely going to be defection. I believe the president has, from the media chat, he has said it very clearly, that a divided ruling party is simply an invitation for the opposition to take over power. So if the convention, the APC convention, tilted toward one side and without mechanism to carry the other side along or to provide concrete reason, certainly the PDP is going to take over power in 2023.
Senator Sani, thank you so much for coming to speak with us on Political Paradigm.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's Political Paradigm. Thanks for watching. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.